There's still fighting going on in Afghanistan, but in Herat they do it for fun these days. The people of Herat have enjoyed relative peace now for 3 years. There's only the occasional dispute. There's no beer drinking in this crowd, and women are not allowed here. The victory of the Mujahideen over the communist government brought with it an Islamic revolution. The recent takeover of the town by the student Taliban movement happened with little resistance, and life carries on as normal. Herat was badly hit during the Soviet occupation, and many historical monuments destroyed. But it's been relatively unaffected by the past 3 years of factional fighting between rival Mujahideen. Taxi driver Zaheri Sufi lost everything during the war. He remembers well the atmosphere of fear that reigned over the town.
There
was terrible fighting here in Herat, and at that time there were hardly any cars. There were only tanks and military vehicles. There were no taxis, for example. For every shop that was open, there were 4 closed, and the roads were in a terrible condition. There was so much fighting. If someone was lying injured in the street, no one could risk going to help him. There have been a lot of changes here. Everything has got better. The number of people in the city has increased, and houses have been rebuilt. Each year there are more and more changes. Lots of markets have sprung up, and the roads have been rebuilt. Until last year the roads were terrible, but now they've been repaired.
There's an air of optimism and organisation about Herat, with reconstruction happening on every corner. Its stability has been attributed to the order and discipline imposed in the area after the victory of the Mujahideen.
On the first day of the victory, when Herat province was ours again, all arms were collected from the different militias. Administrative offices were set up, sound systems were put into place, and from that date until today, order and security has reigned in Herat.
Herat is the windy city of Afghanistan. Dating back 4,000 years, it's the site of the world's 5th civilization. Much of it was destroyed during the war, but after 3 years of peace and stability, it's already beginning to flourish, and its people are working hard at rebuilding their lives. The taxi driving business has been good for Zaher. In the last 3 years, he saved enough to have his home rebuilt. Like thousands of others, his house was flattened during the war. He and his family have been living in a rented room for the past few years.
We've decided to rebuild our house. As you can see, we've already started on it. I would like to buy doors and windows to finish the house, then move into it so we can get on with our lives.
Thousands of tourists flocked to Sultan Hamadi's shop during the 60s and 70s, when Herat was on the hippie trail. Business is slowly picking up again, although mostly in the form of export. Nomads and local craftsmen have been busy producing again, although some traditional craft now reflects the experience of the war years. Sultan's pride and joy is the blue handmade glass which Herat was famous for years ago. The kiln was closed during the 14 years of war, but Sultan was encouraged to open up again once peace returned. After 14 years with the Mujahideen, Saidullah Sahibzada is back as Sultan's master glassmaker. This is thought to be one of the few workshops in the world making glass by this traditional kiln method. The blue colour, which doesn't show until the glass has cooled, is created by mixing iron ore powder with a molten liquid.
We've picked up and restarted our work here. We're trying to expand our kiln business from 1 to 4 kilns, and we're increasing the number of apprentices from 1 to 6 or even 7. We're training up these apprentices so that when the few warlords who are still fighting are defeated, we will expand and open factories in Kabul, Kandahar, Mazar, as well as Herat. We're trying our best.
Imports and exports are handled by the town's customs depot. Herat's position, near the border with Iran, makes it a conduit for the massive imports from Iran to the rest of Afghanistan. The place is bustling with activity, and tax revenues have more than doubled in the past year. There are a few items which leave the country in vast quantities. This is the most recent haul of opium, hashish and heroin confiscated by customs. Sultan packs up boxes of one of the country's few legal exports. Today, Herati glass is headed for Denmark and Germany. Saidullah is turning out 100 pieces of glassware a day to keep up with demand. He prays that peace will return to the whole of Afghanistan, but if necessary, he will fight again for his country and for Islam.
If we see a reason for fighting in Afghanistan, we'll not spare one drop of blood. Not only me, but all the apprentices will go to the front too. But if it's not necessary, we'll continue to work here.
In Afghanistan, they can be sure of very little. But the Heratis are tired of fighting and are now determined not to let anything spoil what they have worked hard to achieve. Herat was once a great cultural and commercial centre. If peace holds, its people know that it can be great again. This is no man's land between Iran and Afghanistan. These people are unloading their belongings from Iranian to Afghan trucks. They're Afghans who fled to Iran as refugees when war tore their country apart. Now that fighting has calmed in most of Afghanistan, they're headed for home. They're armed with a tarpaulin, 50 kilograms of wheat and $25 each from UNHCR. 600 refugees are now crossing the border every day. Most are glad to be home.
زندگی ما دیگه زندگی فلاکتوار بود دیگه زندگی نداشتیم مثل زندانوری بودیم تمام زن بچه ما از خانه نمیتونست بیرون به بچهای ما برج 6 تومن 8 تومن عیاد رانی میگدیم توی میلان بازی نمیتونست میگفت افغانی.
Returnees complain of heavy-handed tactics by the Iranian authorities and say they were thrown out even though they were holding permanent work permits.
ما اثر کار گرفت پول کارگری ما هم نداد یک ماه فقط ما روز اول تونستیم بگیریم بعد از اون ما برد به اردوگاه یک ماه به اردوگاه بودیم جزا هم داد ما رد کرد به افغانستان فامیل ما مشهد حاله هیچ اطلاعی هم از اونا ندارم.
hours from the border is the town of Herat, which has been stable over the past 3 years. This is the returnees' first port of call. Despite complaints from returnees, General Alauddin, military commander of Herat, is careful not to criticize Iran, which was host to 2 million Afghan refugees.
خب طبعا ماجرا که در هر کشور باشه او به تکلیف چرا خانه و کاشانه خود وقت که از دست داد او رنج و تکلیف دارن مشکلات دارن. من فکر نمی کنم که طور خود رهبری جمهوری اسلامی ایران و طرفدار آزار و اذیت مهاجرین بود، بلکه اگر یک کارم صورت میگیره از طرف افراد است و البته در ارتباط هم صحبت‌های با مقامات ذی علاقه جمهوری اسلامی ایران شده که در اگر کدام فشار و تکلیف آنان موجود باشند و در اونا را کمتر شود و البته در ارتباط صحبت‌های باز نشده.
New returnees are brought from the border to a transit camp on the outskirts of Herat. From here, those from areas where there's no fighting will be transported home within 3 days. People are moved on quickly to avoid overcrowding. At one point in July, 1,000 people were returning daily. UNHCR says if that had continued, the camp could not have coped. Even the current 600 a day is stretching them. Mohammed Haroon and his family arrived at the camp 2 days ago. They spent 14 years in Iran. Most of his children were born there. He has bitter memories of the place and came back voluntarily. Herat is a busy market town and has so far coped well with the thousands of refugees passing through it. But if fighting spreads in Afghanistan and Iran keeps on sending the Afghans home, the build-up of refugees could seriously destabilize this border area. Compared to its neighbor, Afghanistan has few luxuries to offer, but most returnees are relieved to be back, even though life's not easy here. Sabiru Isufi and her family returned from Iran 3 weeks ago. They're from Herat and are staying at a friend's house until they have enough money to get a place of their own. With few jobs available, that might be some time, but they're relieved to be home. Her husband and eldest son were arrested in Iran and told they'd go to prison if they didn't leave the country immediately.
خب دکتر زیاد بود و دیگه مواد غذایی هم مثل دیگه سالا انسان خیلی وضع خراب شد و پیدا نمیشد. الله چه فکر میکردیم هم خاکای افغانستان ما از اینجا بیتر بود. خیلی ما رو زیاد اینجا نبود.
The Afghan refugees who fled to Iran during the war built a new life for themselves there. Those who have returned to Afghanistan are finding it hard to pick up the pieces. Amongst the devastation, many have had to completely change their way of life. "15 kilometers outside Herat, a small village is being built by a group of returnees. These nomads are an unlikely group of settlers, but they've had to give up wandering around the country. They're having to put to use building skills they learned as refugees in Iran.
که خانموز مادر و مادر کوچی و این زندگی مو د پلار نیکه څخه درود د ښه زندگی مو کېدله نو دنیا مو ډیره میز ودای شان درود مادری مو ډیره درودله پس چې تر هغه کوچی سو اوس خانموز لاړو ایران ته مادری ګر راڅخه لاړه راته لاړه و چې دلته رالم ځکه موږ نه لرو مادری موږ نه لرو هیڅ شی نه لرو په تش مزدوري په تش یوه کارګري یوه کور چې 10 نفره دغه ولري.
The nomads and their children are having to adapt to living in a country coping with the aftermath of war. Landmines are a constant danger. 2 of their children were killed last month when out collecting brushwood for fires.
دا خطر خو موږ اوس موږ ته ډېر مشکل دی. بیله پاسه دغه اوس موږ دغه ګردوګاش کوو بوټی راوو نو ځي دا ولس دی بوټی راوي ځي سرات یو شی راوي دغه هلکان ماشومان ځي ټک یې ماین پورته سوي وایي دغه پوستې د شوراویانو پر دار چې و شوراویان تللي پر دغه خطه باندې پر سړک باندې دي نو دا پوستو سره موږ سره ډېر خطر دی هره ورځ یو کوچنی یو شی هره ورځ وایي نو ډېر خطر دی موږ سره.
Finding work is always difficult for returnees. This carpet weaving project is run by a local development group for women refugees and widows. The students are taught dyeing and design techniques and how to read and write. The carpets were shown in an exhibition in Paris, sponsored by UNESCO. Since then, the orders have been flooding in. They're going to expand, so soon there'll be work for more women.
We have different kinds of women. Some of them are internal displaced people, and some of them are refugees. They came from Iran, and some of them are refugees that they came from Pakistan. And many they are poor people. They need help, and in this workshop we start to learn them how to make the carpet, and also we give them food for work.
Those who are moving on from Herat to their homes don't know what's in store for them. Mohammed Haroon and family leave for Kabul today, and he's paying for the baggage to be transported with them on the bus. They're feeling apprehensive after the security of the camp.
ایران ماندیم که اینجا خیمه است ما اونجا کجا بریم؟
اینجا یک سر فشار به یک دلاسای ما میکنه اونجا خب هر طرف فشار است.
اینجا خونه یک خیمه است که ششتیم اینشتو کاکا کنه.
ما روز که اینجا حرکت کردیم ماشین ما که اینجا آمد آورد ما اینجا آورد ما در خیمه جا داده ما. هر روز از ما خبر گرفت که چه رقم چه وقت میری چه وقت چیز میکنه ماشین برای ما گرفت مال ما را بار کرد پس آورد ما از وقتی که در خاک خود گرد شدیم خیلی کت ما چیز کردن.
The camp will keep on helping all the returnees that pass through here. But those who can go home must go, because there are some who cannot leave, and there's not room here for everyone. As yet more returnees head for homes they may no longer have, they leave behind others who are even worse off. People from towns and villages where there is still fighting will have to stay in this camp until it's safe for them to return. Considering Afghanistan's recent history, they may have a long wait ahead of them. As yet more returnees head for homes they may no longer have, they leave behind others who are even worse off. People from towns and villages where there is still fighting will have to stay in this camp until it's safe for them to return. Considering Afghanistan's recent history, they may have a long wait ahead of them. This is Anna Roberts for Twee Vandaag in Herat, Afghanistan.